Okay, welcome everyone. This deep dive, all about the psychology of memory and e-commerce, is powered by Growth Suite.
That's right. Growth Suite helps you run incredibly smart discount campaigns on your store.
Hmm.
The kind designed to really stick in your customers' minds.
And the great thing is you can test it out completely free on your Shopify store right now. Just head over to the Shopify App Store, find Growth Suite, and give it a try.
Definitely worth checking out.
Okay, so let's get into this. Quick question for you listening. Have you ever, scrolled through an online store, maybe seen an ad, and then just minutes later, the brand felt, well, fuzzy?
Yeah, like you saw it, but you can't quite bring the image or the name back.
Exactly. Or, the flip side, you see a logo maybe you haven't seen in ages, and bang, it just instantly feels familiar, like running into an old friend.
Oh, absolutely. It happens constantly, right?
Oh.
We're just swimming in brand messages every single day. Most of them. They just wash right over us.
But some just manage to lodge themselves right in there, in our brains.
Yeah.
And that's the fascinating science we're diving into today. Why some brands become, well, unforgettable, deeply embedded in our minds, while others just vanish.
And it really boils down to a key process the brain uses, something called memory consolidation.
Memory consolidation. Sounds technical, but is it basically how the brain files stuff away?
That's a great way to put it. Think of it as your brain's incredibly complex filing system.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly sorting through all the fleeting bits of info from your day and deciding, okay, is this important enough to keep long term?
And if you're a brand, you are desperately hoping the answer is yes, right? You want to get into that long-term file cabinet.
Desperately. Because the payoff is, well, it's massive.
Yeah, we saw some really eye-opening numbers when we were looking into this.
Yeah.
Did you know something like 55% of purchase decisions are influenced by subconscious brand recognition?
Subconscious. Not even actively remembering the brand name, just that gut feeling of familiarity when you see it again.
That feeling seems to matter way more than people might think.
Oh, it does. And brands that get this, the ones that use strategies that align with how memory consolidation actually works, they can see significantly higher recall rates.
Yeah.
We're talking like up to 70% better recall.
70%? Wow, that's not just a little bump. That's potentially transformative for a business.
Absolutely.
So our mission today in this deep dive is basically to unpack the science. How do our brains actually store memories, strengthen them, and then how do we translate that into practical, actionable insights that you can actually use for your brand?
Right. We want to explore how brand memory forms, what factors act like, super glue for these memories, actual strategies you can try, how you might even measure if it's working.
And also touch on some of the challenges because it's not easy, right? And look at some brands that are really nailing this already.
Yeah, the goal is to make this potentially complex brain science feel simple, relevant, so you walk away understanding not just that brand memory is important, but how you can actually start influencing it.
All right, let's jump right in then. Memory consolidation. At the most basic level, what is that process?
Okay, so it's essentially the biological process where your brain takes those initial kind of fragile short-term memories.
The fuzzy ones we talked about.
Exactly, the fuzzy ones. And it converts them into more stable, durable, long-term memories. It's not like just hitting save on a computer. It's an active process. It involves actual physical changes in your brain's connections. And it takes time.
So turning that quick mental post-it note into something etched more permanently, something you might remember years later.
You got it. And for brands, this consolidation process is absolutely critical. It's what determines whether a customer will actually recall your brand when they need something in your category.
Like thinking, oh, I need running shoes, Nike.
Right, that's recall.
Yeah.
Or whether they simply recognize you when they see your logo or your ad again.
And you mentioned earlier that recognition, just that feeling of familiarity, can sometimes be even more powerful subconsciously than active recall.
It really can be. Think about it. Recall takes conscious effort. You have to actively search your memory banks. Recognition, it's much faster, more automatic. It's that split-second gut feeling, oh yeah, I've seen this one before. I know this.
And that familiarity just bypasses some of the critical thinking.
It often does. It can feel safer, more trustworthy, just because it's familiar. And that feeling can nudge purchase decisions without you even consciously realizing it's happening.
Okay, that's a huge takeaway right there. It's not just about being top of mind, but also about being instantly familiar when someone encounters you.
Precisely. And our brains are complex. They handle these different memory types using interconnected systems. You've got the explicit system for the conscious stuff, facts, a brand, specific ad campaigns you remember seeing, your own personal experience buying their product.
Like remembering the specs of a phone you bought.
Exactly. And then there's the implicit system, which is more automatic, more unconscious. That jingle you just can't shake, the instant feeling a certain logo evokes, maybe even a smell associated with a store.
Ah, okay. So the really strong brands manage to build connections in both systems.
That's the goal. They create both conscious knowledge and those automatic gut-level associations.
And here's the part that kind of blew my mind when we were prepping for this. Sleep plays a major role in all this memory filing.
A massive role. It's really fascinating. We used to think sleep was just, the brain shutting down for maintenance.
Right, just resting.
But the research is crystal clear now. While you're asleep, particularly during certain stages, your brain is incredibly active. It's replaying important memories from the day, strengthening the connections for those memories it deems worth keeping.
So it's like the brain's night shift crew comes in.
That's a perfect analogy. The night shift for the brain's filing department. They're taking all those temporary files from the day, including your experiences with brands, ads you saw, even using a product, and deciding which ones get moved to the permanent storage folders.
So my brain is literally working while I'm asleep to make that ad I saw earlier stick better?
That's exactly what the science suggests, especially during the deep, slow-wave sleep stages. Your brain is physically consolidating those memories.
Wow, okay. That's one reason why maybe seeing an ad right before bed could actually be more effective.
It's a strong possibility. Those memories might get prioritized for processing during the night's consolidation work.
Okay, that is truly fascinating. So sleep is the memory filing department's busy night shift. What are the things then that act like flags for the brain? What tells it, hey, file this one away, this brand experience matters? What makes something actually stick?
Well, based on all the neuroscience research, probably the single biggest factor, the superglue for memory, is emotional engagement.
Emotion, really. More important than just getting the information across.
Absolutely. Significantly more important for making memories stick long-term. When a brand experience triggers a genuine emotion, could be joy, surprise, a feeling of connection, even just mild amusement or curiosity, a specific part of your brain called the amygdala gets involved.
The amygdala, okay.
Think of the amygdala as the brain's highlighter pen. It gets activated by strong feelings and essentially tags that memory as emotionally significant. It sends a signal to the rest of the memory system, like, pay attention to this one. This might be important for survival or well-being.
So like that Dove Real Beauty campaign we talked about?
Yeah.
That definitely struck an emotional chord with a lot of people.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
a prime example. By tapping into powerful positive emotions around self-acceptance, body image, realistic beauty, Dove didn't just show you soap. They created an emotional experience.
Right.
The amygdala fired up, flagging those campaign memories for saving, for consolidation. Compare that to, a generic ad that just lists product features, much less emotional tagging going on there.
And positive emotions are better for this.
Generally, yes. Positive emotions tend to release chemicals like dopamine, which acts like a reinforcement signal, strengthening the memory link to that good feeling. Stressful experiences, on the other hand, release cortisol, which can actually interfere with memory formation. So, yeah, making people feel good, not stressed, is usually the way to go for memorable branding.
Okay, so rule number 1, make them feel something. Emotion is VIP. What about repetition? We hear that all the time in marketing. Repeat, repeat, repeat.
Repetition is important, but memory science adds a really crucial layer of nuance here. Just showing the exact same ad, the exact same message over and over again can backfire. It leads to something called habituation.
Habituation, like getting used to it.
Exactly. Your brain is incredibly efficient. It's designed to filter out stuff that's constant and unchanging because it stops being novel or potentially important. If it sees the same thing repeatedly, it basically learns, okay, I've seen this, nothing new here, and it starts to tune it out. It starts ignoring you.
So your brain literally starts filtering out your ad if it's too repetitive.
Pretty much. So effective repetition needs to be smarter. The research suggests a couple of things. One, repeating the exposure within roughly 24 hours can be good because it catches the memory while it's still in that initial fragile consolidation phase.
Okay.
2, varying the creative slightly helps combat habituation. Same core message, maybe, but presented with different visuals, a slightly different angle. It keeps the brain just engaged enough.
Keeps it from tuning out completely.
Right. But the real powerhouse technique for building strong, long-term memory, that's spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition. That sounds familiar. Isn't that like how those language learning apps work? They bring back words just when you're about to forget them.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
That's exactly the principle. Instead of bombarding someone with your brand message 10 times in one day, which is cramming, you strategically space out the exposures over increasing intervals of time. Maybe once today, then again in a few days, then a week later, then a month later.
And why does that work better?
Because each time you encounter the message after a longer gap, your brain has to work a little harder to retrieve the memory trace. And each time it successfully retrieves it, that retrieval effort actually strengthens the memory pathway, making it more durable, more resistant to forgetting. It's far more effective for long-term consolidation than just rapid-fire exposure.
Okay, so it's about smart repetition, spaced out, not just blasting the same thing over and over. Got it. What else makes these brand memories really sticky?
Another big one is contextual reinforcement, and especially using multisensory input.
Multisensory, meaning more than just visuals.
Exactly. Your brain doesn't store memories in isolation. It builds richer, more interconnected networks when an experience involves multiple senses. Think about truly iconic brands. They often nail this.
Coca-Cola.
Great example. You've got the instantly recognizable visual, the red, the script logo. You have a unique tactile feel of the contour bottle. You have sonic branding. The pop and fizz sound is iconic. And of course, the taste and the feeling of the carbonation.
Yeah, they hit a lot of senses.
They do. And when these sensory cues are consistent across all their touch points, the ads, the packaging, the website, maybe even in-store experiences, they create multiple redundant pathways to the brand memory. If you can't quite recall the logo, maybe hearing the jingle triggers it. If you forget the jingle, maybe seeing the distinct red color does the job. It makes the overall brand memory much more robust and harder to forget.
So engaging more senses creates a stronger memory web.
That's the idea. It gives the brain more hooks to hang the memory on. And of course, we have to loop back to sleep-dependent consolidation. We mentioned it earlier, but timing really can't matter. Experiences, including brand exposures that happen relatively closer to when you go to sleep, seem to have a better chance of being prioritized by that overnight consolidation process.
Which might explain why those late-night TV ad slots or evening social media campaigns can sometimes show better recall later on.
That's one strong hypothesis, yes. They benefit from that immediate overnight processing window.
Okay, so let's recap the keys to stickiness. Make them feel something real. Emotion. Repeat smartly, using spacing, not just saturation. Engage multiple senses consistently. And maybe even consider the timing, especially around bedtime. These are powerful ideas. How do brands actually start doing this? What are the practical strategies?
Right, let's get practical. First up, building on the emotion point. Emotional storytelling. We know emotion is king for memory. And stories. Stories are like pre-packaged memory enhancers to the human brain. They naturally activate the key brain pathways involved in memory formation and consolidation, the hippocampus for initial encoding, the prefrontal cortex for longer-term storage.
They just fit how our brains like to organize information.
They really do. Think about that classic Apple Think Different campaign again. It wasn't a list of computer features, was it?
No, it was about rebels, misfits, geniuses, changing the world.
Exactly. It was a story. It had a narrative arc. It evoked strong emotions of inspiration and nonconformity. It had relatable, if iconic, characters. That narrative structure created a much deeper, more meaningful, and ultimately more consolidated memory than just saying, our computer is faster.
So for your brand, this means actually crafting narratives, like about your founding story or customer successes or the values you stand for.
Precisely. Create stories with an emotional core, with relatable elements, maybe the customer is the hero, and where your brand plays a natural, meaningful role in resolving the tension or achieving the goal in that story. Connect through narrative, not just product specs.
Okay, storytelling first. What about leveraging some of the neuroscience findings without needing, $1 million brain scanner?
Good question. You can definitely apply neuromarketing principles even on a smaller budget. We know from research using things like eye tracking or basic EEG, where people tend to look on a screen or an ad, and what kinds of stimuli grab attention and seem to correlate with better memory encoding.
So you can use those general findings.
Absolutely. Place your key elements, your logo, your main call to action, your value proposition in the spots where studies show eyes naturally gravitate. Often that's the top left, near faces if they're present, or towards areas of high contrast or movement. Use those visual cues to guide attention.
Makes sense.
And crucially, when you're testing your ads, your website design, don't just look at immediate clicks or engagement. Try to measure recall later. Ask a small group of people who saw your ad yesterday or the day before if they remember your brand or what they remember about it. That delayed recall is a much better proxy for actual memory consolidation.
Right. Measure if it stuck, not just if they glanced at it.
Exactly. Another key strategy is thinking about memory reactivation, or sometimes it's called reconsolidation. The basic idea is that every time you successfully retrieve a memory, that act of retrieval can actually make the memory trace stronger, more stable.
So reminding people helps reinforce the memory.
Yes, but strategically. Brands can trigger this retrieval process. Use really consistent visual elements. Your logo, your specific brand colors, maybe a unique font across absolutely everything you do. Use consistent sound cues if you have them. The more consistent the triggers, the easier it is for the brain to retrieve the brand memory when it encounters them.
So every time they see that consistent logo, it's like a little ping that strengthens the memory file.
That's a good way to think about it.
Huh.
You can even use interactive elements, maybe a quiz, asking customers about their past positive experiences with your brand, or content that references previous campaigns. Anything that prompts them to actively retrieve the brand memory helps to reconsolidate it, making it stronger over time.
Okay, consistency triggers retrieval and strengthens the memory. Makes sense. And back to sleep again. Sleep optimized campaigns.
Yes, and let's be clear. This isn't about trying to manipulate people while they sleep. It's about understanding the brain's natural rhythms. Aligning your marketing timing can potentially enhance consolidation.
So things like scheduling social media posts or email campaigns for the evening.
Potentially, yes. The idea is that the brand exposure happens closer to the sleep cycle, where consolidation is most active. Some brands are even experimenting with incorporating relaxing content styles, like ASMR, into their branding, which is interesting because ASMR can trigger brain waves, like theta waves, that are also associated with memory encoding.
Huh. Interesting connection.
And then, following up the next morning with a related message could potentially help reactivate those memories that were hopefully strengthened overnight. It's about working with the brain's natural processes.
Okay, these are definitely concrete strategies. Emotional stories, applying neuroprinciples, consistent reactivation, and smart timing. But how do you actually know if any of this is working? How do you measure if your brand is genuinely becoming more memorable?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Mm.
For most brands without access to, neuroscience labs, it really comes down to focusing on accessible behavioral metrics. And the most important one, as we've touched on, is delayed recall tests.
Not asking right after they see the ad.
Exactly. Don't just ask, hey, did you see our ad 5 minutes ago?
No.
Wait 24 hours, 48 hours, maybe even a week. Then ask them what brands they remember seeing in that category, or what they recall about your specific ad or message. If they remember you after that delay, it's a strong sign that the memory has undergone some significant consolidation. It has actually stuck.
That time delay is the critical difference.
It really is. Another practical method is testing recognition in clutter. Show potential customers your brand logo, or maybe a key visual from your ad, but embed it among a bunch of competitor logos and other distracting visual elements.
Like a Where's Waldo for your brand.
Kind of. Can they quickly and accurately pick your brand out from the noise? Does it pop? This tests that automatic subconscious recognition we talked about earlier. If your brand is easily recognizable even when surrounded by distractions, that's a good sign.
Makes sense. Are there other ways?
Yeah, a bit more advanced, but still doable without brain scanners, are things like implicit association tests, IATs. These are often online tests that measure how quickly and automatically someone links your brand name with certain positive or negative attributes like quality, innovative, trustworthy, or maybe boring. Faster reaction times in linking your brand to positive traits suggest stronger, more automatic positive associations in their implicit memory.
So it taps into those gut feelings.
Exactly. And even simpler, just running basic unaided recall surveys periodically, asking your target audience, when you think of your product category, what brands come to mind first? But doing it maybe a week or two after a campaign burst can give you a better sense of long-term memory impact than immediate post-campaign surveys.
So the consistent theme is measure what sticks over time, not just the immediate splash.
That's the core idea for measuring consolidation, yes.
This all sounds incredibly powerful, but let's be real, it can't be that easy. What are the big hurdles brands face when trying to become more memorable in this way?
Oh, it's definitely not easy. Probably the single biggest challenge everyone faces is just the sheer, overwhelming information overload in today's world.
Right, we're bombarded.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Your brand isn't operating in a nice, quiet space. It's competing with literally thousands of other messages, Ads, social media posts, news alerts, emails, everything, all vying for a very limited amount of attention and processing power in the brain's memory systems.
It's like trying to shout in a hurricane sometime.
It really is. This constant competition creates massive interference. Similar messages from competitors can blur together or even cancel each other out in memory. Plus, there's the added factor that excessive screen time, especially late at night, can actually disrupt the quality and structure of sleep itself.
Which disrupts the very consolidation process we've been talking about.
Exactly. So brands have to be really smart and strategic. It's a delicate balance between achieving enough frequency to be noticed, but also incorporating enough novelty or variation to avoid that habituation, that tuning out.
It's a tough tightrope to walk. And as we get better and better at understanding exactly how the brain encodes memories, there are definitely some tricky ethical questions that pop up, aren't there?
Absolutely. As the science gets more sophisticated, it really sharpens the focus on ethical neuromarketing. If we learn precise techniques to influence memory formation and decision-making, especially tapping into subconscious processes or leveraging natural cycles like sleep, well, where do you draw the line between effective, persuasive marketing and outright manipulation?
That's the core question.
The sources we looked at really emphasize the growing need for transparency. There's a push for brands to be open about how they're using these psychological insights, rather than applying them covertly to sway consumers without their awareness. Consent and respecting consumer autonomy become really paramount.
Transparency feels like the essential counterbalance to these powerful techniques.
I think it has to be. And one final challenge worth noting is cross-cultural variability. Memory isn't a monolithic process. It doesn't work exactly the same way for everyone, everywhere. Cultural backgrounds, learned associations, individual life experiences, even things like differing sleep patterns across cultures can significantly influence how information is perceived, processed, and consolidated into memory.
So, a strategy that works brilliantly in one country might fall flat or even be misinterpreted in another.
Absolutely. Global brands can't just assume a one-size-fits-all approach will work for building memorable connections. Localization needs to go beyond just language. It has to consider these deeper cultural nuances in cognition and memory.
Wow. Okay, so it's a powerful toolkit, but one that definitely comes with significant responsibilities and requires real nuance and cultural awareness. Maybe we can look at a few brands that seem to navigate this well. Who's getting it right?
Yeah, the sources pointed to some classic, perhaps obvious, but really illustrative examples. Nike comes out frequently as a master of building semantic memory and using that smart repetition we discussed.
Just do it.
Exactly. Just do it is a perfect case study. It's a simple, incredibly powerful message that they have paired consistently for decades with emotionally resonant stories, often stories of overcoming challenges, achieving potential, pushing limits. They use athletes, but often focus on the struggle and determination.
So it's not just repeating the slogan.
No, it's spaced repetition of the core message, but always linked to those powerful emotional narratives and strong visuals. The result, they've deeply consolidated the connection in our semantic memory between the Nike brand and concepts like performance, determination, aspiration, empowerment. You see the swoosh, and those ideas often just pop into your head almost automatically.
Okay, Nike for semantic memory and repetition. Who else?
Coca-Cola, as we touched on, is a powerhouse of multisensory branding. They are masters at hitting memory from multiple angles.
The logo, the bottle shape, the sound.
Right. The iconic red and white visuals, the unique contour bottle shape. You could recognize it by touch alone. The distinct sounds, the pop of the cap, the fizz, and of course the taste and the feeling of the carbonation. Plus, they consistently run emotionally charged campaigns, especially around holidays, often viewed in the evening.
Ah, hitting that pre-sleep consolidation window again.
Potentially. By engaging so many senses and linking them all consistently to positive emotional states over decades, they've built these incredibly robust, overlapping memory networks. It makes the brand almost impossible to forget.
They've really woven themselves into the cultural fabric through memory. Any other examples?
Dove is a great case study for emotional reconsolidation. We mentioned the initial impact of the Real Beauty campaign that created a strong emotional memory trace linked to the brand.
Right, that feeling of authenticity, challenging norms.
Exactly. But they didn't just run that campaign and stop. They periodically reactivated that core emotional message with new campaigns, fresh creative, different stories, but always reinforcing that central theme of real beauty and self-acceptance. Each new campaign prompted consumers to retrieve and re-engage with that initial emotional connection, effectively strengthening and updating the memory trace over time. They used emotion not just once, but as a way to continuously reconsolidate their brand positioning.
So consistently tapping back into that core emotion strengthens the link. Powerful stuff. These are great examples of how these principles translate into real-world brand building. Looking ahead, where does this field seem to be going?
It's definitely evolving quickly, sitting right at that exciting and perhaps slightly unnerving intersection of neuroscience, marketing strategy, and technology.
Yeah. What's on the horizon?
Well, sources talk a lot about AI-powered personalization. Imagine artificial intelligence that can analyze vast amounts of data to predict your individual memory patterns, how quickly you forget things, what kinds of messages resonate most strongly with you, and then dynamically adjust the timing, frequency, and even the content of brand messages shown specifically to you, all optimized to maximize memory consolidation based on your unique cognitive profile.
That sounds incredibly targeted, almost unnervingly so.
It does raise questions, for sure. There's also research exploring more advanced techniques for creating memorable experiences. Things like using augmented reality, AR, or virtual reality, VR, to create incredibly vivid, rich, multi-sensory episodic memories, like actually experiencing using a product or visiting a virtual brand world.
Creating memories that feel like real-life experiences.
That's the idea. And even more cutting edge, there's research into using specific sound frequencies or patterns embedded in marketing content that might subtly mimic the brainwaves associated with optimal memory encoding, either during wakefulness or potentially even targeting sleep stages, though that's highly speculative and ethically fraught.
Wow, that really does sound like science fiction territory.
It's moving fast. And inevitably, as these techniques become more powerful and sophisticated, the need for clear ethical frameworks becomes absolutely critical. The future is going to require serious, ongoing conversations about industry self-regulation, potentially mandatory transparency requirements about when and how these neuro-informed techniques are being used, and really robust consumer education so people understand how their own memory processes might be targeted.
Finding that balance between marketing effectiveness and respecting individual autonomy and privacy seems like it's going to be the central challenge moving forward.
Absolutely, it's the tightrope we'll all be walking.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the brain and how it holds onto brands. So much to think about.
Yeah, we really saw how memory consolidation is that crucial backstage process that turns those fleeting brand encounters into lasting recognition and recall.
And that hitting the right emotional notes, using repetition smartly, especially that spaced repetition, engaging multiple senses consistently, and even being mindful of timing around sleep cycles are all key factors that help make a brand stick in memory.
And remembering to measure the delayed impact, that recall after 24 or 48 hours or more, not just the immediate reaction, is how you really gauge if you're building those durable, consolidated memories.
While also navigating that intense information overload and always keeping those crucial ethical considerations about influence and transparency front and center.
Definitely. Understanding these principles, even at a basic level, really does give brands a powerful advantage, a toolkit for building a presence that doesn't just get fleetingly noticed, but genuinely gets remembered, ultimately driving recognition, loyalty, and, yeah, revenue.
So a final thought for you listening. As our understanding of how memory works continues to deepen, and as technology enables ever more personalized and potentially potent ways to influence it, how will you start to think differently about the brands constantly vying to become unforgettable in your own mind? And maybe more importantly, what responsibility do you think brands truly have in that pursuit?
Something to ponder.
Absolutely. And remember, if you're running a Shopify store and you're looking to apply some of these psychological principles to create smarter campaigns that really resonate and stick with your customers, check out Growth Suite.
Yeah, it's designed to help you create those memorable discount experiences that actually convert.
You can find it right on the Shopify App Store and test it out completely free. Give it a look.